final speaker is Joe Najduch. He's the future energy project manager within the ORION project. That is a partnership between Shetland Islands Council, Net Zero Technology Center, Strathclyde University, and Highlands and Islands Enterprise. An ambition of ORION is to utilize Shetland's existing oil and gas infrastructure and skills, along with the formidable wind and tidal energy to produce green hydrogen. Excellently fitting into the title of our webinar today. They aim to provide a holistic solution that connects into opportunities in the northeast of Scotland, the UK, and Europe. But I will pass the floor on now to Joe to tell you more about it.
No, thank you, Desi. So if you just bear with me, I'll present my my slides. Yeah, so as Desi said, I suppose what the ORION project strategic framework rather than a project, it's a program of different Park University, Net Zero Technology Center, HIE, and then also ourselves as the council for Shetland. So what we're trying to do is provide a holistic solution for the island. And that ensures that we get the most benefits and least costs for any developments happening around Shetland. And I suppose we've mentioned the team there, so I'm one of the project managers for the team, the Shetland Islands Council side of the team. That's led under an executive manager. There's 2 other project managers and a communications officer. So we're quite an expanded team from when it started. So it's 5 members from the Shetland Islands Council side, along with other officers, along with teams from Net Zero Technology Centre and the other project partners. So if I just move on. Yeah, so I suppose what are the benefits we're trying to get from this? We're trying to make the most out of what Shetland has to offer, and for those of you who know about Shetland, it's I suppose a relatively isolated location, but it does pack quite a punch for where it is. For instance, it's served the oil and gas industry for the past 50 years and has contributed roughly 45% of UK oil and 10% of UK gas. So I suppose Shetland has always been an energy hub of sorts for the past 50 years, and what we're trying to do now is ensure a just transition away from the current oil and gas industry and make the most out of future business opportunities such as hydrogen usage and export and production, but also the use of CO2 and storage, which is another opportunity we're looking at as well. In terms of wind, why produce hydrogen on Shetland, and what is the product that will be ultimately sold and exported from Shetland? I suppose the benefit we have in Shetland is high load factors, or the highest in the UK, of about 50 to 60%. And you'll see there on the bottom left, we've got the 3rd largest wind farm in the UK being developed onshore, and it's going to be the most productive onshore wind farm when it's operational in 2024. We've also got other onshore wind opportunities being developed, which will put our onshore capacity to just under a gigawatt. So that's quite significant, and that's not counting in the potential for offshore wind that'll come into the picture as well. So we're certainly looking to be net exporters of products, whether that be electrons or particles produced in Shetland. And just to mention on offshore wind, we've probably seen in the recent result from the ScotWind round that NE1, or the block east of Shetland, didn't have any interested projects assigned to it, but we do have other interested developers who are looking to come on the back of later stages of offshore wind development, such as the Intog round. So some of you might have seen Aker Wind, offshore wind, are interested in developing 10 gigawatts of offshore wind north of Shetland, and then we've got another company, Cerulean Wind. Their consortium are looking to develop 4 gigawatts to decarbonise the oil and gas industry, but also kick off large-scale industrial hydrogen production on Shetland. And again, we're looking at local use for the hydrogen, how the demand can be settled locally, but also how we can export it. So I suppose we've come up with some high-level figures in terms of hydrogen, and the local demand, I suppose this is a really high-level number, is roughly about a 200 megawatt wind farm could satisfy Shetland's hydrogen needs, and that's its onshore needs, but also for the offshore industry as well, and the marine industry. That's the biggest industry. in Shetland. Sorry, I think someone's got their turn their mic off.
Yeah. Not that we're very often in the south.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, so we're looking at local demand and also the exporting opportunities, the opportunity as well. In terms of exporting opportunity, we were involved in a study last year looking into liquid organic hydrogen carriers in comparison to other carriers, and we were involved with that project along with ERM, Port of Cromarty-Firth, and the Scottish Government, and that was comparing the different carriers and methods for exporting hydrogen at large scales from different locations. And I suppose in Shetland we have two opportunities. We've got the potential to export via tanker, but also we're connected via multiple pipelines to the mainland. So in terms of how gas blending technologies develop, we could be exporting via the pipeline as well. But I've mentioned that we've also got the CO2 opportunity, and we are connected via pipeline directly to St Fergus. So we do have the opportunity to import CO2, maybe use it to produce synthetic fuels and other products, but also store it in the multiple oil and gas fields that Shetland is connected to via pipelines. So we have fields east and west, and I think in a total of 30 operational and maybe 50 fields we're ultimately connected into via pipeline. So there's an opportunity there to help the mainland in the CCUS story, which may be associated to blue hydrogen as well. Yeah, and just to say as well, Nigel earlier mentioned blue and green hydrogen. There may be an opportunity for producing blue hydrogen in Shetland, but we're looking at that from two angles on its feasibility, and of course there seems to be less of an appetite for blue hydrogen at the moment. So I suppose our big opportunity is green hydrogen, but blue hydrogen could be in the mix because we do have gas throughput coming through Shetland. Whether we produce blue hydrogen on Shetland, export it to the mainland, to be produced for blue hydrogen to produce there, there's opportunities there, so we're exploring that angle as well. And looking at the hydrogen picture, I suppose I mentioned earlier what is the purpose of the ORION project. It's to produce a holistic solution that increases the benefits and decreases the costs. And I suppose in terms of decreasing costs, we're trying to ensure we have a balanced solution. There's mixed views on Shetland, for instance, with the development of one of the largest wind farms in the UK. We have natural beauty in Shetland, so whatever solutions are developed onshore and offshore need to be balanced. And of course, we're speaking to our colleagues in the fishing industry as well, and looking at how offshore wind can be developed and how Shetland can fully benefit from that, but also reduce the costs as much as possible for one of our biggest for the biggest industry in Shetland, which is the fishing industry. And then also in terms of holistic solutions, we're trying to find the system, or the most beneficial system, that also makes the most out of byproducts. If you can see there in the northeast of the hydrogen map, there's the Shetland Space Centre that's being developed here, and that'll require a significant amounts of oxygen, but also hydrogen. So we're looking at them as a potential customer. But also we've got an aquaculture industry here in Shetland that provides 25% of Scottish salmon. And they would also require significant amounts of oxygen as one of the byproducts from hydrogen, and we're hoping that these byproducts would improve the business case for a hydrogen business here in Shetland. And then finally, I suppose that the other byproduct is heat. What we're looking into, and locating electrolyzers where that heat can be potentially used. In Lerwick, we've got a district heating scheme that uses Danish technology. So I suppose we could use some of the waste heat from some of the processes to be reused in systems and future district heating schemes like that. But also hydrogen could be used as backup fuels for a lot of these processes on the island. And then one of the key benefits we have here is a capable supply chain that's been servicing the oil and gas industry and the marine industry for the past 50 years. And we do actually have hydrogen expertise that's been on Shetland for just under 20 years, and assisting in the development of hydrogen projects around the world. So that company is Pure Energy Centre, and they've done some key pieces of work for the ORION team in terms of developing our projects. But we do have hydrogen expertise that has been well established on Shetland for the past 50 years. We also have expertise relating to renewable energy. So we do have some wind farms on Shetland at the smaller scales, and they're looking to develop their businesses and I suppose that's one of the challenges we face is how do these small scale projects link into the larger scale interest that we clearly have in Shetland. I've mentioned Aker Wind, Cerulean Wind, looking at gigawatt scales. We've got one of the largest wind farms being developed by SSE, but we've got other big companies such as Statkraft who are looking to develop renewable energy projects in Shetland. So one of the key questions we have, and it's maybe an item for discussion later, is how do these small scale opportunities fit into the larger scale opportunities, and how do both ends of that benefit? How does the community benefit? How can we have community scale projects working alongside larger scale projects as well? So I suppose here you've seen a picture of this earlier on Nigel's presentation. This is one of the key opportunities we've identified is the Sullom Voe oil terminal. You'll also see the Shetland gas plant that's operated by Total there to the top left of the map. But at the moment, EnQuest operates this major section here in the middle. That's been processes oil to be exported to the mainland. I suppose this is an example of what we're trying to avoid moving into the future. I suppose the situation we have now is Shetland does benefit significantly from the oil and gas industry in terms of the income. The council gets and other income streams that we get from the oil and gas industry, and the community benefit associated to that. But I suppose one of the ironies we have at the moment is we export significant amounts of oil and gas. I've mentioned there the figures of roughly 45% of UK oil and 10% of UK gas. We export those significant amounts only to have to import it again at a premium. So even though we're contributing a significant amount to UK energy, we do benefit one of the least from it, and we do suffer from the likes of fuel poverty and some of the highest fuel prices in the UK because obviously that product has to be exported, processed, and then imported again at a premium via tanker. So I suppose what we're trying to do is alleviate fuel poverty, which is part of the just transition piece, and alleviate fuel poverty by ensuring we're producing our own products and not having that situation where we're exporting and importing. We want to be clear that as well as the need to address the climate emergency, we also need to ensure we get the most benefit out of that. We have a product we can produce. Let's ensure that Shetland can have the most benefit from that, and that's from an island perspective, but also from a wider UK perspective as well. And yeah, just to be clear on the oil and gas industry, I suppose when it first started in the 1970s, we had a situation where multiple operators wanted to locate in multiple locations, and I suppose Sullom Voe is an example of what we'd like to achieve in the future, is a more centered and holistic approach where, for instance, here we have one industrial area that aggregates all the activity, oil and gas activity around Shetland to one location. I suppose that's one of the things we want to achieve through future energy opportunities as well. And we're looking at a just transition away from oil and gas. When oil and gas first came to Shetland in the 1970s, throughput was about 1 million barrels per day, and that's down to roughly hundreds of thousands of barrels per day. So oil and gas business is diminishing, and we need to find alternative businesses to complement that and replace it ultimately into the future. And I suppose oil and gas is diminishing slightly, approaching the 2030s and maybe even the 2050s. So as that diminishes, we need something to replace it, and we need to make sure we're making use of the skills that have been developed over the past 50 years, but also the infrastructure we have in place. So you'll see there the infrastructure on the site itself. We've got tanks there that can be used for storage. We have jetties there that could facilitate exports of products, but also servicing of other future industries such as offshore wind and carbon capture. So we are looking at that opportunity there. And we have some of the deepest water depths there next to those jetties, so that could be a benefit for servicing the future offshore wind industry. And just a final point on this one is we're keen to ensure we're making the most out of brownfield rather than greenfield opportunities. This is again the piece of trying to reduce the costs as much as possible for any development. So if we make full use of the brownfield opportunities, then there'll be less of a cost in terms of developing greenfield sites and some of the natural beauty we have here in Shetland. So again, we're looking for a balanced solution onshore and offshore. And there's just a picture of some of the connections we're trying to make, potentially centered around Sullenvo, connecting into the oil and gas industry, the fishing industry, and aquaculture and the space industry as well. And there's just a picture of the system overall. You'll see some of the vessels operating around Shetland. And I think we've identified that the marine industry is going to be one of the biggest demands for future fuels in the future. And I'll speak about the Neptune projects later on, which is a project looking at the marine industry in Shetland and how that could satisfy demand for hydrogen, but also for there's a potential to use battery technology there as well. And that's just our location there. So even though we're isolated, we're relatively connected to multiple locations. I suppose I've cheekily put there Norwegian power because we are located close to Norway. So there could be the potential in the future to benefit from Norwegian power if that opportunity presents itself, and maybe even Norwegian gas. So I've just put that there as a I suppose a blue sky opportunity that we're considering. We're located close to up to 50 oil and gas facilities. They need to be decarbonised, but also we can repurpose oil and gas infrastructure in the service of future renewable energy, such as hydrogen. And we're connected via pipeline to St. Fergus, so we can be connected into the projects there as well. And just an idea of the capacity in Shetland. So we've got 600 megawatts interconnector being developed, and it'll be ready by 2024 to connect us to the mainland grid for the first time. And as you can see from the Viking wind farm that's being built at the moment, and other wind farms in development, we're going to be close to being at capacity and constrained again. So we're looking at the opportunity of alternative products for these wind developments onshore and offshore to develop future products that would address some of the challenges with constrained wind in Shetland. And I've mentioned wind, but we also have tidal capacity here in Shetland at just below a megawatt, and that's looking to hopefully expand in the future. So we have tidal energy operational in Shetland, and hopefully we can get that developed at larger scales moving into the future, and perhaps to the service of the hydrogen industry. This is just the high-level figure I've mentioned there of some of the local hydrogen demand we've identified, and it's relatively low compared to the I suppose the longer-term picture of what the capacity will ultimately be in Shetland. So I've mentioned a figure of 200 megawatts could satisfy local demand, but as I mentioned, we're looking at the high gigawatt scales into the future and industrial scales. So just to re-emphasize, we're definitely looking to be net exporters of products, and that's electrons and particles, whatever form that takes, whether it's synthetic fuels such as methanol, ammonia, and anything else that's in the energy mix in the future. This is just some of the carbon emissions we're looking to reduce, and associated to this, I'll mention one of the key pieces of work the council is doing at the moment, led by Ricardo. It's I suppose looking at the Bayes analysis of carbon emissions for different areas around Scotland, but I suppose we've identified that Shetland is a very different picture to other local authorities. For instance, the council operates 12 inter-island ferries. We have a marine industry that's not necessarily in the scope of the Bayes data that we're presented with at the moment. So we're trying to produce a net zero route map that addresses the scope of carbon emissions from Shetland properly. Now, just to give a list of some of the activities at the moment, so we've recently almost completed a techno-economic screening study, and what's that that's looking at all the opportunities I've spoken about so far, such as hydrogen production, carbon capture, and it's trying to phase all those opportunities and provide us with a short list of how we're going to develop these opportunities. So that was a piece of work led by Woodmac, VOA, and also Worley, just looking at the northeast opportunity, but also looking at the local Shetland opportunity in connection to that, to see what we should be addressing now, what we should be addressing in 5-10 years time, and trying to phase some of these opportunities, because there are many, but we need a short list of what we need to be chasing now, and have a proper phasing for these potential projects. As I've mentioned there, we were involved in an LOHC study along with Cromarty Firth and the Scottish Government, And then the Neptune project, I'll just briefly explain, is looking at the marine industry and trying to produce a map or a model and a tool to inform the transition for the marine industry. Which fuels apply for which applications, for instance, is one of the questions we're answering. Does a fishing vessel use the same fuel as a short-range inter-island ferry? So that's a project, and we've received £500,000 funding for that to look at what technologies make sense to where and provide a model that could be expanded from the microcosm level of Shetland to maybe a more national picture of how the marine industry can transition ultimately. We've got a power study looking at the grid and how that can service future industry. So we're looking that's a study ongoing at the moment, looking at the grid now and looking at how it needs to be developed in the future to support future energy moving on in the future. And I've mentioned the net zero route map, and then we've also got funding from the islands growth deal. So we're working with colleagues in Orkney and the Western Isles to develop, I suppose, a net zero or an island centre for net zero to develop these opportunities from an island's perspective. So Shetland's received £5 million in that regard, looking at I suppose the community scale of some of these large scale opportunities that I've been looking at. So how do we satisfy hydrogen demand on Shetland? How is that technology developing, and what is how do we ensure that the community benefits from a future hydrogen industry in Shetland? And I've just listed there our partner Net Zero Technology Centre, who've received funding from the Energy Transition Fund, and they're looking to develop energy hubs, looking at technologies for decarbonising the oil and gas industry, but they're also looking at the hydrogen backbone and exporting opportunities. So we're linked to that and looking at opportunities there. Yeah, I suppose in summary, I suppose what are our key outcomes? It's to ensure we have the most benefits and least costs from any developments. I've mentioned that we're looking at the holistic solution. We've got massive developers such as Aker Wind, SSE, developing projects at large scale. How does the community fit into that? And I suppose we've got the same question we had 50 years ago when the oil and gas industry was being developed on Shetland. What is the holistic solution, and how do all the pieces fit together in the best way that increases the benefits and decreases the potential costs for some of these developments? And in terms of just transition, we're looking to address the fuel poverty issue in Shetland. I've mentioned there we actually import our fuel at a premium. Can we produce our own fuels and alleviate that problem to some extent? But we're also looking at the oil and gas industry and the skills that have been built up. Can we use those skills and reskill some of that expertise towards future industries? So I think that's I'll just finish off with this overall map, which you'll find on the website. So you'll see the different elements we're looking into. We're looking at hydrogen, and that's blue and green. We're looking at the opportunities around CO2 and also the byproducts of hydrogen production in Shetland. But we are linking ourselves to the northeast of Scotland and nationally as well. For instance, we're speaking to stakeholders in Germany and looking at exporting opportunities there in terms of the products we can be producing here in Shetland. So I suppose if anyone wants any further information, then I'm happy to answer any questions afterwards. And I've put the email address there for the Future Energy inbox if anyone wants to connect with the Orion project. And I've also provided a link to the website there as well, orioncleanenergy.com, if anyone wants more information. And thank you for having me.
Excellent. Thank you, Joe. That was some excellent insights into the opportunities of transition from oil and gas to renewables and green hydrogen. It is great to hear how much is happening across Shetland. Increasing the benefit and decreasing the cost is something that we're very much interested in the huge project as well. And just transition from oil and gas by repurposing infrastructure, elevating fuel poverty and addressing the climate emergency is something we are all interested in. So thank you very much for this presentation and for closing this part of our webinar. It was an excellent finish. I hope the attendees got the feeling from all the presentations how we all try to work together across the north of Scotland for the better future and for greener opportunities.